All right. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I'll call the April 19th Caroline County Broadband Advisory Committee meeting to order. We have the agenda up here on the screen. Sorry for being a few minutes late on starting. Does anybody have any amendments to the agenda that's currently on the screen that we need to add at this point? All right. I'll take that as a no, so we can go on down to the consent agenda, which is approving the minutes from our last meeting, the March 15th, 2021 meeting. David, do you have those by any chance where you can pull them up, or did we want to read through them, or just?
Everyone received those earlier today.
Okay, perfect.
I guess if you have any changes to that, let us know. If not, if minutes were received, changes, we'll just accept these as the minutes from the last meeting.
And these were also posted up on the web, correct?
They will be. They will go on the website as well. So.
Okay, perfect. All right. Do we need a motion to approve these? Does anybody?
Any changes or additions or subtractions from those minutes? If not, if there are no changes, then I guess they can be approved as read. Or
okay. Do we need to call a vote on that, or just approve them as read?
It's on the consent agenda, so if anybody doesn't consent to them being accepted, please let us know. Otherwise, they're adopted.
Okay. So we'll skip down, moving right along. If everybody's okay with that, we'll move to old business. And I believe, David, you might have an update on our VATI.
Yeah. After the last meeting, we received notification that we did receive 100% of the VATI grant that we had applied for. It's exciting times for us, where I have started. I will be the contact person for Caroline County, so I'll be kind of managing the Caroline County side of the VATI grant. Since it is a 4-county grant, we'll have a manager for each county. My responsibility as far as managing that will be monitoring the progress being made, making sure that we meet the benchmarks of the project, which is an 18-month project. And then as we meet those benchmarks, sign off on invoices so that we pay our portion of those invoices. It's an 18-month process. We have until July the 15th to actually enter into the contract. So we've started those final contract negotiations. Prices, of course, they're set, so they will not change. But there are like managers and different things that have to be set up in that contract that we're in the process of finalizing now. We have another meeting this week. Once July the 15th gets here and the contract's been signed, even though Atlantic Broadband has started some of the work on that project, some of the engineering work, the majority of the work has either starting now or towards July, as far as the work that needs to be done prior to actual construction. So some of the stuff that'll be going on between now and then is applications being made to VDOT for right-of-way construction, final engineering walkouts so that they can make their final plans, and then construction. The majority of it will begin sometime around 15th of July. We have 18 months to complete it. So the areas that are to be served should be completed in about 18 months. Atlantic Broadband will be handling the messaging on the project. So we're in the process of working with them to set all that up, but their public relations department will handle updates on progress and information like that to the general public. So that because it is such a large project over so many counties, what we want to try to avoid is 4 different counties giving out different information. So ABB Public Relations Department will be handling the updates on the project itself. Other than that, it's going to be a busy 18 months. That'll be one of my additional responsibilities. We'll be managing this, making sure that we stay on track. So any information that you guys would happen to hear that we need, just funnel it back through me, and we will try to get it addressed. But other than that, Atlantic Broadband has been gearing up since January, taking a chance that the application would not go our way. They've already got $60,000 or so worth of engineering done ahead of time. So they were kind of rolling the dice, and thank goodness it appears that it's worked out. So that will help us be able to stay on track as far as the timeline. So we appreciate everybody's work here. It was a joint effort across the board. The board of supervisors was gracious enough to fund the county's side of the funding. That was a big move for them, and to show support from the board of supervisors. This team came together and we came up with a strategic plan. That was a huge chunk of the application that made it successful. In the first meeting, the management meeting that we had with DHCD, they mentioned a couple things that helped us score extremely high. Apparently, the application from the 4 counties, we had an extremely good scoring application. Part of the thing that helped us was the commitment from the county. So we weren't asking for funding just from ABB and from DHCD or the FADI program. We actually had skin in the game, and that they said that was a major move for us to be able to do that, and it helped us score, as well as the strategic plan and support of this committee. So I personally would like to thank you guys for sticking in there with us, working real hard, especially right there right before the application was due. And sounds like we did a good job, and so hopefully it'll work out. We'll be able to serve those areas that otherwise would have been probably quite some time being able to get broadband. That's about it. Unless anybody has any questions, I can try my best to answer them.
So, David, I had one quick question. Do you believe, or can we follow up with somebody at ABB to see whether they might be putting some status updates on the progress being made? Are they going to be putting something on their website underneath communities or like their support area? Are they going to have something like that, do you think? Or
we will find out as we meet. We've got another big management meeting this week where that'll be addressed, in more detail than what we have so far. Okay. But it may be that they release press releases and send them out to the manager from each county, so they come through me. Okay, I'll get more detail on that.
I just didn't want to inundate with ABB with a bunch of telephone calls going, how soon before, if you know what I mean.
Right, and that's what we need to try to avoid, because we got to remember that there's like 1,700 homes, 1,600 homes across the four counties that are doing this, I believe. We have the largest part of the project, so we have the most people in Caroline that would be interested. And what we don't want is to tie up their already overburdened phone system asking questions. So once we get that worked out, Jason, I'll be sure to bring that update back to us, and we'll figure out what the flow of information is going to be.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
David, wasn't there was it Floyd or someone who had mentioned the work could be continued using new funds that become available and they could just keep the project rolling? Is that, has that been brought up, or any new information there?
With this, with the VADI project, I'm not sure I'm following. There are some new funds that are becoming available not related to VADI that may, may be eligible to do broadband projects. But the localities are still waiting on guidance from Treasury Department, who will release the guidelines for that Rescue America, I believe it's called, America Rescue Act, ARA or whatever. And there's no guidance that's been released to the localities as to how that money can be spent or what it can be spent on. There are rumors and rumblings that it could have to do with broadband, so there may be some funding that we could try to roll some other projects. One other thing that took place in the first management meeting that I thought you guys would find interesting. In the past, it was almost years ago, it was almost an unwritten policy that if you received a VADI grant that you not really expect to have a second grant back to back. However, in the management meeting that we had with DHCD, they were already asking the localities, are you working on next year, this year's submission? Are you already working on those projects getting ready? Because there is a possibility that there may be additional funds in the VADI grant this year from the federal government. So that's why we took the steps that we did at the last meeting, and we started looking at some projects, which we'll discuss a little bit later.
Thank you.
I hope, did I answer your question, Jason?
Yeah, I want to think something was brought up about, I can't remember the exact location, so maybe I am confused, and that's okay. But, hopefully, if there are additional VADI grants, we can just keep it going with less, red tape. But
yeah,
if we need to, go ahead.
This project is a separate project. So next year's application would be a separate project subject to approval. And so while we can, hopefully have a project that is applied for and approved, it'll be completely separate from this. This one has a total amount and a total area right down to the number of houses that it's going to serve. And anything beyond that would be, it would be separate.
If that's how we got to do it, that's how we got to do it. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, that's definitely a big win for Caroline County and all the different people that it will be passing by. And do we have any other questions for the update on VADI? Because if not, we'll move to number 2, which is, all right, let's get a project ready proposal set for the next VADI. It's just like the movies where they say, okay, attaboy on the last one, let's go to the next one.
So at the last meeting, I received direction to go to 2 vendors who at this time will remain unnamed and ask that we start discussing a possible project down in the Reedy Church area of Caroline County, since that's the one area that or the next logical area to move into. We have large projects with good coverage in a lot of the other areas. So, or we discuss projects that would deliver new coverage to those areas. So we started talking about looking at the next step. That being said, this week I talked with 2 separate vendors. They're both asking for the same information from us as far as addresses, latitude and longitude of the houses that we want to service so that they can start their design of the system and how it would look. We asked both vendors if they could look at a 25 and a 50-mile project. I'm going to go ahead and share my Google Earth so I can better describe why we chose a 25 and 50 mile. So what you should see on your screen there shortly would be my Google Earth. Can everybody see that? Frank?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I asked for a 25 and a 50 mile just so that we could have something to compare it to. So each of these two projects here that you see in yellow are the ones that were just approved under VAD. So you see this area here in yellow and up here in this part of the county in yellow. It just so works out that both sides are about 25 miles separately. Together, they're about 50 miles. If we look at the project that we've discussed with another vendor, covers some area out in this part of Caroline County and then Jericho Road, that works out to about 50 miles. So just to be, I guess, fair and even so that we have something to actually compare it to, we've asked those two vendors to give us a project that is about 25 and or 50 mile, a 25 and a 50 mile project, what it would look like, how many houses it would serve, what the cost would be, what the cost of the county would be, so that at the very least we have multiple projects that we can choose from, and hopefully, it is now April the 19th, so we're closing up on a July deadline for the next VADI grant. We've got a lot of work to do. But if we can get that information from the vendors in time, we should have multiple areas that we can choose from and move forward with submitting at least one of the areas, if not more, for a VADI grant. So that's our plans. I have started talking with those two vendors. There are a lot of different pieces and parts moving in both of them. But I am working with our GIS analyst. What we need to do tonight is just discuss it a little bit and see if we have. So I want to zoom in on this. The red areas of Caroline are the ones that could possibly be served under this project. Started counting miles. The miles is hard for me to calculate on Google Earth because we have a lot of dead-end roads, which is difficult to measure, as well as long driveways. Now, one thing that we have learned over the process of VADI grant applications is that if you want VADI money, you have to cover long driveways. They're not going to cover a project that only covers, for example, houses that are 200 or 300 feet from the right of way. That would cause you scoring problems and you would have a difficult time winning that award. So when you start looking at these areas that we could possibly serve, it's difficult to estimate the length of the driveways and stuff using this software. But if we can look at this map and try to figure out some areas within the Reedy Church or Southern Caroline that we want to look at, then I believe we can get that general area to our GIS analyst who has better tools that could probably figure that out for us. Now I talked to Tyler Day, who is our analyst, and he's saying that if we can give him the areas that we're interested in doing, then he could probably provide us with he could provide us with street addresses, latitude and longitude of the houses that would be in that area. So that's the information that we need to be able to provide to people that we've talked to so far. So I guess if we can just look at this, my question is, if we go up here to the northern part of the project, you see this yellow line here would be the current VADI project that we're working on, and it stops at the railroad tracks. My question is, if we go up in here in this part of the county, population is there, but it's a little more sparse than if we go down here along, say, north and south of Route 30, right through here, or out, 600 or Sunshine Road, we could, pick up more density. one of the things that Daddy's going to look for, and they use a term, a broad swath, in describing the program and, telling you how to score high in the program. You need a broad geographical swath of the county in order to score well. My question is, so I guess whether we come back up here and catch this northern area and include that, and then just come down as much as we can and get those project sizes that we need, or do we just go in, and start at a couple different points and just make sure that we cover, the entire area that we're looking at? For example, if we were going to start over here on Route 30 at the Caroline King William line, if we come in here and figure 25 and 50 miles, we need to make sure that we cover side roads, side roads in all directions, so that we're not leaving side roads undone or missing an area. At that project size, we're not going to, we would not be able to cover 25% of the area that needs to be covered. But at the same time, we have to be careful not to leave side roads or long driveways or any of that out. It has to cover everything within the area that we plan to look at. So I guess, with that being said, I guess we're open for suggestions or what areas we need to try to focus
on. David, I'll be the first one we had kind of spoken about this at the last meeting, but just to update on that little piece of Frog Level Road that is not covered. I know there are two houses right there at the beginning of Route 600 that we had said that we would potentially pick those up, correct?
Yes. The drawing, I just started working. I worked several hours trying to measure the distance of some of the road. So
I've done Google Earth before. Yeah, I can only imagine the amount of time that you spent on highlighting this in red. But I just wanted to call that out. So if anybody in that area is watching it, that they would know that we would not be skipping those two houses right there at the beginning of Frog Level Road and potentially coming back off of the top of Lorney and picking up, I think there's like 12 houses inside of that area too. So if we did go that way, we would just be bypassing. There's a blank spot there that it would be better to go down Sunshine Road and then back over to Lorney, and you can actually, or Lauren Road, and actually pick up more houses and make it a better use of your mileage, in case anybody was wondering why that was blank and not highlighted in red.
And it's just, we need to remind everybody that right now, those streets on red are not the areas that we're planning on doing. It was just, I started doing some measurements just to see how much I could do with Google Earth. So, I mean, those areas have not been decided on. That's kind of, and no area has been decided on or will be decided on tonight. What we're looking to do is just try to find some project areas to start looking.
Right.
So if we pick out some spots on this map and we give those areas to our GIS analysts and they need to come back, they'll tell us the number of houses, number of miles, that kind of information. That's kind of what we're just looking for a starting point at this point. So I'm open for suggestions of how we want to do that or what areas we want to try to do. And I guess that's what we're looking to get from the committee at this point.
My comment would be that at the very top where that red line ends at Baghdad, isn't that Caroline Pines, and aren't they already serviced by a high-speed provider?
It stops just short of Caroline Pines.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I would imagine Sadie Lane has a lot of passing per mile. That's on the southern end of the Route 30 into.
Yeah, if you look at the map, if you look at the, just take a 30,000 foot, I don't know, Frank, how far up would we be? 10,000 feet? You're the pilot. But if you look from this height, you can see where the houses are concentrated. Should we just focus more on trying to get it. I mean, that's what we want. We want the highest bang for our buck, the most number of houses that we could get. And really, and the vendors that I talked with said, don't really worry about where the starting point is of the project. You tell me what you want to serve, and that's what we'll figure out what happens. Part of the reason is some vendors don't even want to give us their actual ending point of their current service, so we don't know exactly where that may even stop. So, I mean, what do you guys want to do as far as now? Let's bring this up too while we're here. You see all this area in blue. All of that area in blue is areas that have already been awarded RDOF money.
Okay.
To Atlantic Broadband. That's public information, so I mean, there's nothing really to be said about us releasing that. Their goal is to probably within the next 3 years service all of the areas that are within that blue. If they choose not to, then they have to pay a fine because they've been awarded that area, so they would have to pay a fine to the FCC. The other thing is that not only do they have to serve all the areas in all this blue now, but if a new house comes up in this area in the next 10 years, from the time the award was given, they have to give service to that as well. So this area is pretty well set. If we look at this, the purple is existing, yellow is batty, so those are pretty good. What we don't have on here, we have some Comcast on this side of the county that's not shown on the map. So other than that, that gives us a pretty good idea of what has coverage now or will be getting coverage. And if you remove all of the other areas that I was playing with the red lines, you see that this area right in here, this part of Caroline, we don't really have a lot of coverage, or we don't have
right.
Really. So that's why I think this is a good logical area for us to look at. And again, if we can get some guidance from the committee, what do you think as far as, do we just go right in and just start chopping away at the high density areas, or do we, go from the north to the south and cover an area? What do you guys think would score us the best in a batty project, get the most number of citizens covered for the money that it's going to cost to do that?
I mean, I would look at if we can get sections of the county covered, like now we've got the northern portion of the county, it's starting to get with the first batty award that we got. We're building out the central, and we've got this eastern side of the county, and with RDOF funds, that really just leaves. And you said that there's some Comcast up in the western side. Is that on 658 or whatever?
Yeah. So this map doesn't really show it very well, but for example, this road all through here, both lakes, Lake Caroline, Lake Landor, down Route 1, a little bit down here, and then down Route 1, pretty much to the Hanover County. Well, down below Carmel Church, there are some too. So there's a lot of this area that does have Comcast. I'm working with Tyler to get the KMZ file that the county produced manually that shows that area. And if you drop that in here, you're going to see that a lot of this is covered. And then, we talked to certain vendors about some areas on Jericho Road and Anderson Mill Road that's not covered. So we started working on a lot of the areas over there. We still have some area up here in the northern part of the county. Density is going to be difficult in that area because there's a lot of farmland. This area over here that received the RDOF funding, a lot of density issues. If we had to try to figure out a solution to cover that, it would be very difficult. So thank goodness RDOF is coming for that area. because that's an area that you'd have a hard time within the technology that currently exists with even fixed wireless covering that much of an area. And it's my understanding that some of these projects, the majority of these projects that we're looking at, if not all, that are coming up that have already been covered, will be fiber, fiber to the home. So that's good future-proof installation. So
now,
we're pretty strong in that area. We just need to pick our next step. We don't have to worry about all this in here because this is all in detail.
Now, David, correct me if I'm wrong. The very, very light blue thin line, that is the county border, correct?
Yes, this line down through here follows the river across the bottom down to the Hanover Courthouse almost, and then back up.
Okay, all right. So that is the eastern side of Caroline County is with the RDOF funds. It's basically filled in that whole eastern part of the horn over there on the right-hand side. Okay.
So those people in those areas, they have coverage on the way, and Atlantic Broadband has, I think, 5 years to complete the construction, but they're saying they're going to have it free. So they're moving forward to get that area served quickly. And again, the yellow, we're looking at about 18 to 20 months from now will be completed. The purple is already completed, up and running. And we have a lot over here that's already up and running. We just don't have that on the map, but we will by next week.
So I guess the only other logical thing is, like you said, the southern portion of the county, start measuring out, I think the red line, not saying that it is the red line, but that area that you had in there would be the next logical to start, trying to fill that in and grab some dense areas inside of there and build out the architect or the infrastructure down there.
Yeah, so if we look, it's kind of difficult to do, but if you look at this is about 25 miles of roads, side streets, and driveways. This is also about 25 miles of road, streets, and driveways. And just to give you an example, if I start here, which was the most western point, and go across and come down and go out to about right here, that's about 35 miles of main roads. So we still have side roads, driveways, which would probably put that at 50 to 70 miles.
What can I ask one quick question real quick? When you say side roads, can we define what a side road is?
Well, side roads, I would say, for example, if we zoom in here, if you had a state road, like this road here, Birch Lane, coming across to here, and basically the population ends right about here at this subdivision. Then you have a section of road where there are basically no houses. So this would be what I would consider a side road. If we skip that in the project and don't cover that road, then that does a couple things. It drops us down in our scoring with Daddy because we're not covering the entire area. But it also leaves that road stranded where it, most of us would think that if you have broadband connections coming down through here, that it'd be that much easier to get to this. But I can tell you that you having it down through here, and then when you count the number of passings per mile on this road, it's not going to be high enough to have the cable company come back at a later date and make this little short run. That's why you want to cover that road in the initial project, and that way they have the coverage. So that's what I would consider a side road, for example. Or this little section here, if we go up here and look at this, again, several houses between here and Ruth Glen Corner, I think is what they used to call it. But then once you get past this point, there's not a lot, until you get up closer to this road. So then at that point, it would make more sense to try to get this from a different area,
Right.
rather than come in from down here, because you're paying them between $20,000 and $40,000 a mile just to hang fiber where it's not going to hit a single household.
Right. No, I just wanted to define, what we were talking about as far as side roads, like Loving Lane, and
So in
stuff.
right here, for example, I covered the main roads, but when we look at the project, we do need to cover these Loving Lane,
Okay. Yep.
all these side streets.
Yep, that's just what I wanted to make sure.
Side streets and long driveways, and that runs the mileage up, but it's the only way that we're going to get any state funding is if we cover, say we wanted to go from here to here in these 2 points. The only way that they're going to give us any state funding is if we cover everything from there to there.
Well, and it only makes sense. It's the only way to do it because, and it's I guess, I'm speaking for myself, but being on this committee, we want to make sure that we're using the money wisely and not leaving areas stranded to where it's not going to be advantageous for the companies to come back and lay in the fiber optic cable. Let's do it now while we're in there and we have the resources to do it. So,
well, one of the other key words that they use constantly at the state level as far as funding is universal coverage. So they want everybody covered. I mean, their goal is to have the entire county covered, and that's what they. So I guess realistically, that's a huge hurdle to cross. But at the very least, they want universal coverage within the project area.
Right.
So that's why by universal coverage, they mean every long driveway, every side road. They don't want stuff stranded. So if we're going to submit a VATI project, it has to cover the side roads and long driveways.
Okay.
Any suggestions, or do you guys want me just to pick some projects and we can get the numbers and start looking at them, and we can always amend or make changes from there?
I think you have a good straw man already. I mean, now I think the area that you're looking at is already a good straw man for us to start, figuring out, where we need to go from. Now it's just a matter of because we need to pick out either 25 miles or 50 miles and, include the side roads, long driveways, and things like that. Do you want us to? So I guess for me, a question I would ask is: Are you looking for us to say, hey, let's look at the Baghdad area and come 25 miles from there towards, Route 301 and 30, and grab as many places as we can there, or is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys can give me some guidance, we can at least get a initial project and start getting the number of houses and what kind of cost. Just for the benefit of people that may be listening to the broadcast on YouTube, one of the reasons why we want to be able to give service to as many people as we can. I mean, that's the bottom line. But the other part is that the more houses that we pass, the more contributions we get from the partners that we're looking to partner with. So again, that gives us more money to extend the project further. So it makes sense for us to try to go into areas where we have the highest population density, so we get the highest contribution from the partner, and then that allows us to extend the project out further, and the end cost to the county is reduced by the number of houses that we're able to pass, or the overall cost of the project is reduced to the state. Now, the more houses we pass, the more the county has to contribute. If we follow the same guidelines that we used last time, the guidelines that we passed last time was don't ask for more than 60% from VATI, 20% from the partner, and 20% from the county. If you get far away from that, then your application will be scored down. And that came from the consultant that we hired, and it must have worked because we stayed within the guidelines and we were successful. So it's kind of the rough estimate that we're using to try to figure the cost of these. So when we get a number of houses and a number of miles, we know about how much a 25 and a 50-mile project costs to do. You know, we can get some rough estimates before we even get the numbers back from the partner that we're talking to. So that's kind of where we're at and where we're going. So if you guys want, I will just continue to look and we'll try to figure out a way to get, you know, a 25 and 50-mile project that's going to cover the most number of houses.
I would think that we take a look at the 3301 corridor, that little star point there, and starts, spanning out from there, kind of like what you've done. And,
maybe come from this point down to here, figure out how many miles that is, and use whatever miles we have to try to cover as much as we can.
Right. Or, potentially even come up from Hanover Courthouse, because I know Hanover has it up to the river, correct?
Yes.
So if we come up from Hanover Courthouse, do we get more coverage coming up that way? Or?
And the other option is under the current RDOF, coverage will be to right here at the county line. So,
okay.
So we have a
but that's
here.
In King William, though.
Yes.
The RDOF is up to the King William line.
Yes. RDOF
is
here. We have existing coverage here. And we estimate that we have some coverage up to that point. And then Batty, we would have it down to here. RDOF gives it to us over here.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we're working with. One question that we need to find out from Bill is, with the RDOF funding being awarded in this area, you notice this road here is the dividing line, because these go by census blocks. So that's how come some of it's covered and some of it's not. It's census blocks. My question would be, if you're covering this side of the road because it's RDOF, what happens to this side? Are all these people going to not have it available, or are they going to be able to get it? What happens? So that's one question that I have for ABB with the RDOF stuff. This area right here, I think, is the most visible that happened, because a lot of this borders AP Hill or another county line. But if you look at this section of road right here, there are some houses on this side that are not in that census block that are going to theoretically have fiber going down the road right in front of their house. So what happens to those guys? How can we look at that and try to figure out a way to make all that work?
Right.
All right, so I guess if there's no other suggestions, we'll kind of take the guidance that Jason has given and work to see what we can come up with.
David?
Go ahead.
This is Mike. I'm just trying to figure out, could we take each one of those outlying points as a theoretical start and just kind of do a rough order of magnitude, number of houses and miles, and find the one that has the largest number of homes and compare it that way?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I would try to do. I mean, I guess we could figure, this being a starting point here, this being a starting point, this being a starting point, maybe even this being a starting point.
Yeah, to just try to figure out where, like you say, if we want to do, to make ourselves exemplary in the proposal, let's find the string that gives us the most houses and at least discuss it. I'm not saying that that's the only selection point, but it would be nice to know of those fingers, how many houses are we talking about on each one? Just curiosity.
Judging from, and of course, this is going to be dependent on the RDOF being completed. So how does that play into the timeline that we have for Batty? This would be dependent on RDOF being completed. How is that going to figure in? But for example, my rough estimate is that if we could start right here on the Caroline King William line, we're picking up a few houses along here more so than you are in some of this area over here. There's a lot of farmland here, but not a lot of houses, for example. But here, you could actually start picking up houses right at the county line and catch some of these side roads, that have a density. My concern down here is that from the Hanover County line, you have a lot of miles, you have several miles in here that have little or no density. Now, come off of one of these side roads right here, there's some development in this area that you could cover. So we have different options, but what we can do is talk to GIS and see, hey, we give you a starting point. Can you tell me the highest number of houses that we could serve in a 25 to 50 mile from these starting points? Give them multiple starting points.
I figured the GIS guy could do that fairly quickly and fairly easily.
Yeah, he's got a lot more tools than just Google Earth. So,
right.
That I think that's kind of what we're thinking, Mike. If that makes sense, then that's what we'll do. We'll pick the most realistic starting points and try to get a comparison of the different starting points. I think that should be the guidance that I need there. So let me go back. We'll go back to the agenda.
Okay. All right. So does anybody else have anything else on the proposed Reedy Church area? What we've given to David at this point. Does anybody else have anything else?
Thanks, Mike. That's a good point. So I think what we'll do is get with him and just give him multiple areas, see what we come up with.
All right. So I guess we'll slide down to new business then. An update on ABB overall status.
Yeah, so we're watching a couple of areas of concern that different people in the community have brought up to us, or we've heard through different representatives that I think we need to follow up at some point. I know that right now we're still in the middle of a pandemic, but when the pandemic's over with, it's ABB intending to reopen their Bowling Green office. I think a lot of people did actually conduct business there. So that's one area of concern. The other area of concern that I'm hearing is that because the upgrade on the head end in Bowling Green is not complete, there's a stretch of 721 that's not being served that has fiber running right down that power line, but they can't get to it until until that building is upgraded. So that's both of these concerns I brought up to Atlantic Broadband, but we'll continue to follow up. And if you guys hear anything or have any other concerns, please let us know, and we'll try to follow up with Atlantic Broadband. And as soon as I know a response on those two areas, I'll make sure to bring it back up to this
committee. Okay.
Do you think there's anything that we can do to push them along to get that head end done? Because, they had promised several customers that it would have been done first of the year and they'd be able to get service, and that obviously hasn't happened yet. Any ideas there as to whether there's any way that maybe the board or the county or somebody could put a little pressure on them to get that going.
I think Frank, and you guys correct me if you disagree, but I think at this point we'll give them a chance to respond to our request, and then based on that, we could maybe consider a recommendation from this committee to the board to maybe at least notify them of the dissatisfaction with those two areas. Because I think one probably is just as widespread and as much of a concern as the other. I think both of them are have a lot of people upset. So those are two areas, and I know that we've got the pandemic. They've got a lot of construction going on. I think we need to give them a chance maybe to respond to my request for information, and then we can revisit it, see what we can do from there. I mean, how do you guys feel about that?
That makes sense.
That sounds fine to me. I have no problem with that. I guess I'm a little bit frustrated because of people that I know that they have, like I said, that they've already told, and they don't seem to have a really good track record of keeping their dates that they keep promising people.
I know for the first 4 or 5 years when they were talking about different projects, it was always 9 months away.
Yeah.
And it was always 9 months away. And 9 months from now, it's still 9 months away. So
exactly.
I think what we need, and I'll address this to Atlantic Broadband and see if we can get a date that will be complete.
That would be a big help. I mean, if it's something that's going to be firm that they will obviously adhere to, that would go a long way, but also help with planning as far as other entities that are trying to help out those particular businesses and people as well as to how they can plan and as well, because it's not only affecting them, but it affects a lot of other people as well. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, and so I know that we've made them aware that we really, my standpoint, it wouldn't make sense for me to contract with them for a backup internet service to be used in an emergency, knowing that in the process of upgrading that head end, that service is going to be interrupted. So now I'm taking a backup service that made it less reliable. So it just doesn't. For example, why would I be interested in a backup connection to use in case the other one goes down, knowing that my backup is going to be taken down for upgrades and improvements, possibly for a while. And I've made the salespeople aware at ABB of that concern. But I think what we need is a firm date for that upgrade and a firm answer as to whether they intend to open up a local office again. Does anybody else have any other concerns that we need to address while we're doing that? One thing that we do have to remember, in defense of the ABB, out of all the partners that we work with, they seem to be the most interested in helping us address our ambition to be able to serve as many people as we can. So they are a good partner, and we don't want to do anything to jeopardize the big picture. But at the same time, we do need. Right now I see at least 10 or 15 customers that should be served based on where the fiber is now that are not, because of the project not being the upgrade not being completed. Is that the way you see it, Frank?
Yeah, absolutely. And from not knowing exactly how their routing and stuff is going with their physical fiber, but still have a hard time understanding why they can't go ahead and connect to those people with the current setup the way it is. At least be nice to have maybe a technical explanation as to why, I suppose, because in my mind, I don't see any reason why they couldn't connect those people on Sparta Road. And then if they need to backfeed them later on, I wouldn't think it would be that big of a deal to cut them over. So I just don't know.
What about, I mean, how do you guys feel about if we contact them and try to get one of their technical people? Because Bill is not, I mean, he used to be more technical, but now with the change in position, he's not, he doesn't have the hands-on that he used to with the construction and the technical side of it. Maybe we can get a technical person to visit us at one of our meetings and answer our questions.
Yeah, David and Frank, I would think that would be a good thing, because that would give us at least some reason that we can make public or can issue whatever statement for why that's not happening. And we could also question that particular person, like Frank says, can they hook up now and back, feed some other way, and when the head end does come online, is that a big issue for them or not?
All right, I will see. I will see if anyone if anyone's willing to talk to us, knowing that they have a whole lot of engineering and a whole lot of construction that's going on our behalf right now with the FADI and the RDOF. So a lot of the people are tied up, but I'll see if I can get them in for a 15 or 30-minute visit with us at the next, possibly even the May meeting. If that's okay with you guys, I'll make that invite.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Yeah, I think it would be good. I think at least give them a chance to communicate. And that, as I had stated, I think in previous meetings, and even said that to Bill last time he was in our meeting, that, communication goes a long, long ways into helping, satisfy people's concerns. If they just, tell us exactly what's going on and not just leave you hanging, kind of as they have seemed to do in the past by giving you dates and then keep pushing them forward with no end in sight. So yeah, I think if you could set something like that up and maybe kind of give them the prerequisites of why we want to know this information and how it does, affect them in the community, and we can certainly help. I think in a lot of ways make them more palatable for people to want to use them, and maybe squelch some of the negative comments and stuff that we see on Facebook and different things, about them. As I stated before, once you've got their service, at least in my instance, it has been great. The service has been reliable, and no issues there at all. But just the communication process and getting stuff fulfilled and stuff just seems to really be like trying to push a rope.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jason, I think that takes care of number 3.
Okay. All right. So is there any other new business that we have at this time? Okay. So I guess that brings us down to talking about the next meeting date and time and format. I have, based on looking at the calendar, May 17th looks like the third Monday in the month.
Mr. Thomas, are you available for a quick question?
Yes.
At the 17th, does that work with the county schedule as far as you know at this point?
The 17th of May?
Yes, sir. For the next.
Yes, sir.
That's a Monday. Oh, yeah, we should be done. We only had that special Monday meeting for board work session, so that should be good. And did you mention the fact that you and I are trying to arrange a meeting with providers and possible providers?
Yeah, and we've actually started talking to some of those, and we know what they need from us to carry on the dialogue. So I'm in the process of working with Tyler to get the information that both of them have requested. So.
Perfect. Okay, so the 17th looks good.
Okay. All right. So I guess at this point, is there anything else that we need to discuss before we adjourn? All right. Hearing crickets, we'll go ahead and adjourn at this point.
Okay.
All right.